I tell you, when I was a kid, I never ate breakfast. Well, we barely had any food. But now, it's my favorite meal of the day. My kids, I make sure they always start the day with a hot meal. It's funny, some people, how they say they'd never steal.
How's it going, guys? Dylan from Luxury Lives On, and I hope everyone's doing well today. Today we're in front of a 1923 Silver Ghost. And not only is this car infamous because of the mobster that owned it, it's actually famous too. In fact, an example of this car was used in the famous HBO show Boardwalk Empire, which featured this exact mobster. Although that was just an example. Today we're in front of the real thing, and not only am I going to take you around it, we're going to drive in it too. Now guys, before I get started with the mountain of information that I have to tell you guys about this car, I just want to thank the Calumet Collection Museum here in San Diego. Their inventory is, well, a bit outrageous. I don't know if you could say no to seeing a giant room full of Rolls Royces and Bentleys. And not only that, they're low production ones and ones that are probably worth over $1 million. And not to mention, they've won an award or two. So please check them out in the link below. The owner's name? Nucky Johnson. He was the, well, undisputed boss of Atlantic City during the Roaring '20s. A time of prohibition where even drinking your grandmother's cooking sherry would have sent you to jail. The coolest thing about this car is not its immaculate finish, nor the expensive use of materials or even the attention to detail that had to go into making the car. No, it's more about this tiny little hole here. You see, that's a bullet hole, and it tells a story of a driver in the front and a Nucky at the back avoiding bullet fire in the streets of Atlantic City. Wait a second, now this can't be right. He was just a nice Rolls Royce owner. What is this? It says list of crimes. Huh. Bootlegging, gambling, prostitution, racketeering. Oh, right. Alright, so we've established that Nucky wasn't exactly, well, an angel. In fact, you can add something else to that list of crimes. He was also a bit of a philanderer. Legend has it that bullet hole's not from some rival gang, but rather a disgruntled husband chasing after them. He missed the driver and Nucky, but I can imagine it wasn't the most intense chase considering, well, it was the 1920s. I'm gonna shoot you! Alright, so now that I've told you the story of the bullet, let me tell you the story of the man acquiring it. So, the interesting thing on the owner's record is Nucky's not the first one, but many people think that that was actually a camouflage name used because, well, he wasn't doing exactly savory things back then. But he was listed as the second owner, and in fact it was delivered to him at the Ritz-Carlton. How badass is that? Now, when John acquired the car for the museum, it was rather interesting because the car, well, no one knew what it was. In fact, it was in the Gooding Company's possession originally. Then the next owner, it sat for like 4 years, and well, no one really cared about it. It wasn't in great shape, and it just needed to be restored, and no one seemed to know the story of Nucky behind it, which is really interesting, and they found out through the records later on. So let's quickly walk around this epic 1920s Rolls Royce Silver Ghost. First of all, the first thing you notice is the color scheme, and in my opinion, I think it's perfect because it's really, really cool and interesting. All the colors kind of match, but it's almost sinister and gangster, just like the man who owned it. That dark maroon red and the black, and then that chromed metal is just gorgeous. And it should be gorgeous because this is actually a 100-point car, even with the bullet in it. Now let's move on to the interior of this car. And well, we're gonna first look at where you plop your driver. The front here, it's pardoned off the section. They even have a little driver's Rolls Royce hat, which clearly doesn't fit my head because of the size of it. But you can see, which is really interesting in this car, is how simple the interior is. It's not meant for the, a pleasurable, beautiful experience in the front here. It's very simple and down to business. And that's because all the magic has to happen back here. This is where everything gets really fancy. You have pillows in here. You have a little set for you to write whatever parchment you need to write. Obviously the little seat here as well. There's also luggage, and also luggage at the back, but I mean, it's so comfortable. I mean, just imagine being back here, being a mobster, being driven around in your Rolls Royce. Now I'm showing you the roof and the window line of this car for a reason. Back in the day, you usually had one chassis and then two different bodies that would go on top of it. You'd have a summer one, and then you'd obviously have a winter one. Except for the original coach builder that built this thought that was, well, stupid, and I'd have to agree because going through that much hassle just for different seasons way back when probably wasn't the most cost-effective and easy thing to do. So normally you think of Rolls Royces as big V12s. Well, cut that in half, call it a 6, and well, it's still bigger. 7.4 liter, 6-cylinder engine, producing 50 horsepower. Trust me, it was a lot back then. And it's a 2,200 pound body. So it's not exactly a Lotus Elise, but I mean, the same concept applies. And I mean, just look at the fit and finish on this car. Everything is highly polished. It looks like a cappuccino machine in here. And you have the same on the body. It's so beautiful. Different mixes of the gloss black, the silver, the maroon, and then almost this framing around it, this pinstriping. All right, guys, we are on board the Nucky car. I have Pedro here, the curator. He keeps all the cars sorted, and right now we're going for a ride. This thing is epic. He's pretty much the only one that can drive him, specifically this car, because, well, it's not that easy, is it?
No, it's very difficult. Very difficult. The transmission is super difficult, and the brakes are mechanical brakes.
One thing I can say I love is the view out the window. The Spirit of Ecstasy in the older cars is so much bigger. It's actually pretty awesome. It's actually quite a large car. It's narrow, but it's large. This thing has some pretty good power. So this is the 50 horsepower, 48 technically, right? All right, well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've had enough time in the front. I think it's time
to feel like Nucky Johnson.
Yeah, I feel like Nucky for a change. All right, this is hilarious. I've got my pillows back here. There's just so much to do back here. I mean, little things like a little pad to draw on. It's hilarious. I feel like this is the life. It's so cool. It's actually very comfortable and cushiony back here.
Sure.
It's like the chair has suspension in itself. As being a Rolls Royce, this is not a car that, well, you're going to be going around Laguna Seca in, obviously. It's a car that takes a bit of precision. Everything's manual, everything's tough, hard to push, and that's what makes it so difficult to drive. So it's a car that really you want to waft around in. Actually, well, very traditionally Rolls Royce. All right, now we're not going to go rob any banks, okay, Pedro?
Okay.
Nothing on the agenda illegal. As being a Rolls Royce, this is not a car that, well, you're going to be going around Laguna Seca in, obviously. It's a car that takes a bit of precision. Everything's manual, everything's tough, hard to push, and that's what makes it so difficult to drive. So it's a car that really you want to waft around in. Actually, well, very traditionally Rolls Royce. All right, now we're not going to go rob any banks, okay, Pedro?
Okay.
Nothing on the agenda illegal. Well guys, when do you get to even stare at these cars, let alone drive in them? That was obviously an awesome experience and slightly, well, informing, because I never really thought about how difficult it must be to drive these early 1920s and 30s cars. Because obviously you have no synchro mesh, the brakes are hard as steel, and you really don't have all the luxuries. But I guess this is more for your chauffeur to figure out. In fact, it was cool going at the back and kind of sitting in the seat of Nucky Johnson, that, well, very misunderstood mobster. Because, well, it's really comfortable, very private, and I can only imagine how cool it would have been driving in this car back in the day. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please check out the Calumet Collection Museum. They have, well, an outrageous inventory. I mean, who the hell wouldn't want to be filled in a room of priceless Rolls Royces? Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.